What's up, everybody? It's your boy Brandon here with another YouTube video. Today we're going to be doing one of my favorite things on earth to do, which is European mounts. We're outside, there's cars driving by, there's going to be some wind noise, so I hope you forgive me for that. But a buddy of mine shot a deer up north, brought it to me, wanted me to European mount it. I got to get it done tonight because I've been procrastinating and everything, so I got to get it done tonight, so it's going to be a quick thing. But first of all, I just want to say that I learned a lot of what I learned from Whitebone Creations here on YouTube. I will definitely link his channel down below in the description. I've been doing European mounts since I was about 11, but when I found his YouTube channel, it changed the way I did it 100%. So definitely go check out his channel. He's 1,000 times better at it than I am, and he's a great teacher. He has a talent for it. So, but anyways, I got a little whitetail buck. We're gonna European mount it, and I'm gonna take y'all along for the ride, so hope y'all enjoy. Alright, here we go. This is fast forwarded, so I try not to lose y'all, but it's fairly simple. Get as much meat and hide off as you can. I made a cut from between the antlers out to the tip of the nose, peel it down both sides. This skull took me a little longer than I would have liked it to, between the cheap scalpel blades I had that kept breaking and it still being a little frozen once I got back there behind the antlers. It was pretty difficult to get skinned. It actually made it easier to get the eyes out though, them being frozen, so it was a neat little trick. Yeah, you just got to get as much meat and hide off as you possibly can. I definitely recommend getting all hide off. If you can't get all the meat off, it will come off. It just may have to boil longer, and you may have to pressure wash a little harder and a little longer. The knife I'm using here it's a Havalon folding scalpel handle. I think it's called a Piranha or something. The blades are cheap Amazon blades. I don't recommend them. There's the first break. I won't make that mistake again. I ordered about 60 of them, and I think I went through 5 in this one skull. Normally, with the Havalon brand, I use one a skull. But yeah, this is a fairly simple, straightforward process. I know some people may think this is kind of gross. Click off if you don't want to see it. This is part of preserving your trophy as a hunter, so you just have to deal with it. It's not real complicated. Get as much hide and meat off as you can. So that's what we're doing here. I tried to include as much of this in the video as I could and not edit any of it out so that you can see about how long it'll take an average person and what all goes into it. Right here's where it's frozen, and it was not easy to get all that apart and off, and the cheap scalpel blades didn't help very much. But yeah, this is the first Euro mount on this channel. We're going to be doing a lot more. I've got probably 5 or 6 hog skulls in the freezer I got to do, and I got a neat trick to help degrease those. So if you like what you see, like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends. I'm going to put some music in now to help keep y'all entertained, and we'll be back in a second. Alright, so we got the skull somewhere right there, boiling. So while that's doing it, man, this lighting's changing like crazy because I'm outside. So while that's doing that, I'm going to give you all a rundown of what all you need. Like I said earlier, I normally use 40% by volume clear developer, but I could only find these little jugs. I couldn't find 1 gallon ones. So I had 4 of these that I ordered on Amazon, and it just wasn't going to be enough. So I ran to the local beauty supply, and I was able to find 20%. So what I ended up having to do was I got 2 1 gallons of the 20%, which is equal to 1 gallon of the 40%. It just, you know, less water, more peroxide. And then I ended up getting half a gallon worth, so 4 of these. So I got a total of 1.5 gallons, technically, of 40% by volume, but I ended up having to use 2 gallons of 20 and a half gallon worth of 40. I know that's confusing, but I typically use 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons of 40% by volume to 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons of water, depending on what pot I'm using, whether it's the turkey fryer or the big one that I do multiple skulls in, and pig skulls and everything. But that's the mixture for the whitening part of it. And I store it, I use it multiple times. I store it in a Lowe's 5-gallon bucket with a screw-on lid, and I use it multiple times. You can get 40 to 60 skulls depending on how long it is in between each skull. Just keep it out of the direct sunlight. If you have somewhere, you know, air conditioned or, you know, heated in the winter or whatever, keep it in there. Sorry, I'm trying to make the lighting work out for you guys, but keep watching the screen instead of the lens. But then you're going to need a scalpel or a knife. Those outdoor edge knives that you can change the blade on work. Any scalpel will work. I just have the fancy little Havalon one. You're gonna need 4 snips to reach in and pull the nasal cavity out. I do recommend you pull the nasal cavity out, or it will yellow no matter what you use to whiten it with. And then I use a screwdriver to pop the earbuds out. Thanks White Bone Creations for that one. And then I use saran wrap, packing wrap stuff I bought at Lowe's, electrical tape, and zip ties to put around the first 3 or 4 inches of the antler to keep them from getting whitened in the whitening process. But even if you do, it's not a big deal, because you can take provincial wood stain and a Q-tip and like a rubber glove or something. So there goes my dog. And blend it in real good and recolor the antlers. It's not that big of a deal. I'll do a separate video on coloring antlers and everything and antler restoration in the future, but for now we're just doing the basic European mount. But we got a turkey fryer pot, a turkey fryer stand. We got, I don't know, maybe 2 gallons of water in there, a little bit of Dawn dish soap for a degreaser. A lot of people use OxyClean. I'm not buying OxyClean just for this. I just use Dawn dish soap. But then I got it baling wired to a wooden dowel to keep it up off the pot for 2 reasons. 1, the heat coming up off the side of the pot can blacken the back of the antlers. 2, the pot can actually burn the antlers. Now, if you can keep the nasal cavity from touching the bottom of the pot, I definitely recommend you do that, because it can burn that. I was not able to do that with this one, so I'm just having to watch it real close. But it's been in there for about 10 minutes now. We're gonna let it go until the skull cap, to the meat on the skull, top of the skull breaks, starts to split, and then we're gonna pull it out and we're gonna pressure wash it, which brings me right over to this. This is just a little El Cheapo Greenworks from Lowe's. I've had it for several years, and then I recommend you get the red and the white nozzle, a real fine jet one, and then a fan nozzle. The frying setup, the heating setup's just a propane bottle turkey fryer. This one's a little bit more of a bad to the bone turkey fryer than most. It burns a whole lot hotter and a whole lot faster. Those little Camp Chef ones I don't recommend. I don't think they burn, for me they don't cook hot enough and fast enough, but this thing is bad to the bone. I know the natural gas ones are pretty sweet too. All the supplies you need, guys, it's really not that much. It's easy to do, it's cheap, it's a good way to hang trophies on your wall, you know, and I enjoy doing it. I think it's fun. I love doing hog skulls. Those are my favorite. Alright, so we just took this out of the first boil. I'm speeding this process up too, because I figure you don't want to sit there and watch me pressure wash something forever, but it takes a lot of pressure washing. Right now I'm using the red nozzle, the jet nozzle. Just trying to get as much of that meat off as I possibly can out of every little hole and orifice, as White Bone Creation likes to say. Right here I'm popping out the earbuds. Just stick it in the hole. It's easy to see where it's at. Pry out. Pop that out. And then just kind of clear it out a little bit with a screwdriver. Whatever you got to punch a hole in there. That helps to get a whole lot more of the stuff from the inside out easier. And nobody's ever going to see that, or 90% of the people don't even realize that it's not supposed to be like that. And then right here I'm using 4 snips to reach in and pull out the meat that's in the brain cavity, the brain obviously, and some other little pieces. I don't think my wife liked this part too much. She was behind the camera. But I should have let this one boil a little bit longer, but I was getting impatient. And I actually did it in 2 stages. I boiled, pulled out, pressure wash. Right here is the nasal cavity. So I just stick it in there, squeeze, twist, pull out, and then I'll reach in there and try to get a bunch of more little pieces. Just don't break the outside part right below the eye socket. Don't stick your 4 snips through that. Then we're just going to pressure wash some more, as much as we possibly can. Get as much meat off as we can. Make it a whole lot prettier. And get it ready for the next step. This is simple stuff, man. Anybody can do this. I'd say the hardest part's locating the hydrogen peroxide to do the whitening part with, but that's about that. Okay, so now we've been boiling for about 2 hours. We got about 95% of the meat off. There's still some down in there, but the coloring batch will get the rest of that off of there. So now we're going to wrap the horns to try to keep the pedicles of the horn mainly from getting whitened. So this right here is just a roll of like shipping saran wrap I found at Lowe's. And what I do with that is I go right underneath the base of the pedicle. Zoom in pretty tight on that, get it in focus. Right underneath the base of the pedicle, as close to it as I can, as tight as I can. It's easier said than done sometimes. Then you're going to wrap it, and you can always push it closer up to the pedicle, but I wrap all the way up here because sometimes that stuff will start foaming up and bubbling. And I put a bunch on there, as much as I can get on there. This stuff's cheap. Recoloring antlers ain't hard, but I'm kind of in a time crunch right now and I don't want to have to do it. So that's step 1. And then you can shove the saran wrap up to the pedicle of the horn, and then you take electrical tape, not cheap Harbor Freight electrical tape either, it needs to be real electrical tape. Fold it underneath the bottom of the pedicle, and then wrap it all the way around, pulling it real tight because it's going to heat up and try to separate. And I do that about 3 times, and then just start climbing it up. Once you get off the pedicle itself and you seal that off, you can just separate a few times like that. We got some kids playing basketball at the church next door, so you're probably going to hear that in the footage. And then we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Never have too much. That's the finished product. You can see there's a little bit of saran wrap poking down below the tape. Just try to shove it up. Now we're going to drop this into the whitening solution. Alright, so we just pulled this out of the whitening solution bath. We're going to cut the electrical tape and the plastic off, get it out of the way, and get it ready to rinse. It's very important you rinse this stuff off. I also recommend you wear rubber gloves while you're doing this. I was not, and I should have been the whole process, but thanks to COVID they were kind of hard to find. I only had one pair. Now we're just going to rinse all that stuff off. Real slight rinse, it'll get most anything. Go ahead and stick it off in every hole, make sure you get everything. Fairly simple and straightforward here too. Just rinse, rinse, rinse. Alright, so the boiling's done, the whitening's done, now we're on the finishing table. So this got a little bit of whitening solution right around the pedicle of the horn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this Minwax wood finish, it's a Provincial 211 stain, and I'm going to touch up the base of these antlers. Now, the best way to do this is to put your deer head above your antlers so that if it drips it does not get on the skull, because you will not get it off the skull if you get it back on the skull. So what I do is I just dab it on the lid, get just a tiny bit on there, I get some of it off, and then just make little scrapes. Nothing major, less is more here. You start off real light and you can go heavier if you need to as you go. Just try to blend it. It's a little bit easier to blend it with a rubber glove, but those are hard to come by nowadays thanks to COVID. So I'm just blending it the old school way with a Q-tip. And this deer was already pretty light horned, except for right where he was rubbing, which is kind of cool. We'll get some close-up shots of this here in a second, so y'all can get a better idea of what I'm doing. So typically I'll do that in a couple coats and I'll let that dry, and then I'll come back and see if it needs some touching up. Now the other thing I normally do to finish it out, the other thing I normally do is I'll coat it in Mop and Glow. You can buy this at Walmart. It's just a hardwood floor refinisher. I'll take a brush and I'll coat just the skull, not the antlers, in this stuff, and then let it dry. It gives it a little bit of a shiny sheen. It helps when dust lands on it, just deflects dust off of it. Helps if there is any smell, which I've never had one smell, so it helps with that a little bit. But I'm not going to do that with this skull because the person that shot this animal wants to paint it, and I don't know if that'll interfere with the paint or not, so I'm not going to Mop and Glow it. It's real simple. Pour a little bit in a jar or a bowl and just brush it on. You can't put too much. Just put a bunch on there, let it dry. That's all there is to it. Total, I want to say this took me almost 5 hours in one night to do everything. It came out great, real white and everything. Again, the peroxide, it's water and hydrogen peroxide, or Salon Care Stabilized Formula Clear Developer is what it's called. Now these big gallon jugs are 20% by volume. That's what it says right here. Normally I would look for this in 40, but the only sizes of 40 I could find were these little bitty 16 ounces, and I needed about 1.5 gallons of 40%. So I got 2 gallons of 20% by volume. That equals 1 gallon of 40% by volume, and then I did half a gallon worth of these little deals, so 4 of these little 16 ounce, and I got the equivalent to a gallon and a half 40% by volume and just a little bit less water. But if you can find the 40%, find the 40%. I'll try to link all this stuff down in the description below. If I can find 40%, I will. If I can't, I'll link 20. Again, some people use the cream and they paint it on there and let it set. I've never had one not come out chalky that way, so I don't do that. And then White Bones Creation uses Aqua Silk Pull Shock or something. I can't find that where I'm at. This is all I use. If you find 30%, just do the math. You can use too much of this stuff, so if you're worried, use a little bit less, more water, and boil it longer. Or leave it in the boil longer. As soon as that water starts boiling, you should be pulling your skulls out regardless. It'll get a little too chalky. This stuff will whiten the horn, so wrap the horns with your cellophane and your electrical tape. And again, if a little bit gets on there, it ain't nothing to touch these things up. Recoloring deer antlers is probably easier than whitening deer skulls. It's simple and easy. Again, I would normally be mopping going it right now, but I can't with this skull because they're going to want to paint it, and I don't know if that's going to affect it or not, so I don't want to paint it. It's got no smell whatsoever. Kind of smells like a laundromat. That's weird. But so that's the finished product. It looks awesome. It's a great little buck. I think it was somebody's first buck. I'm not real sure on that, but that's all there is to it. It's easy and a sweet way to preserve your trophy. So we'll see y'all later.